Good morning and welcome to Our Stories. Our guest today is Debbie Czerwinski. When I called Debbie and asked her if she had a story to tell, she said, oh, she definitely had a story to tell. And it was about her husband, Ralph. And so after I listened to the story, I said, okay, this is good, this is good. But I think in terms of the other people who haven't heard your story before, we need to go back and have you give them some background on kind of your upbringing and so forth, and where you were coming from, and part of what led to your decisions that you made early in your life.
My father was the oldest of 8 children, born very austere situation. You can see 6 of the Slayton children are there barefoot, clean faces but barefoot. His mother's mother died when she was 4 years old. She was the youngest of 9. Very poor, austere family. My mother's family on the other side was 5 of them. A little bit better off, but she thought they were hillbillies. So Mom and Dad had a 5-week whirlwind romance. A war bride right before he left for the service. He and 4 of his brothers served in World War II Philippine theater, and they hardly knew each other. Lovely people, lovely people. Anyway, my life was, I was 4th of 5 children. Mom and Dad lived on a farm in Indiana where Dad was like the head rancher of it. He had a degree from college in agriculture. Mom also had a degree. They met teaching at Fairview High School in Illinois, and like I said, they got married. He shipped off and came back and had a son when he returned. But Mom and Dad had a relationship, a passionate relationship. I saw them fight. I saw them make up. And it was not a very stable home. Mother was controlling. Dad was an alcoholic, became an alcoholic when he returned from service, I think more after I was born and they had moved. And I think part of it was, he had a job with more pressure. They had cocktails at lunch, it was kind of that corporate thing. And so I knew growing up at an early age that love was a roller coaster ride, and I didn't need it. I wanted smooth and steady. And so I chose my first husband with that absolutely in the front of my mind. And so the gentleman was a good provider, a nice man, but also was not reaffirming, very controlling, call me a ditz, and it was not a happy 19-year marriage, right. 23-year relationship.
So you grew up in kind of a chaotic situation, and one in which you weren't affirmed a whole lot. Got into a marriage in which you were not affirmed a whole lot. And then you encountered a health problem, which kind of brought things to a head.
So at the end of the school year, I started teaching at the university, which helped me to find a greater self-respect for when. And at the end of that academic year, in May of '94, I knew that I was absolutely unhappy, and at some point during the year, through a program, I had heard that I was responsible for my own happiness. And so I remember very clearly July 1st of that year, I decided I had 6 months, I was going to remake myself. I had summer, I started taking care of myself. I started putting myself first and thought, I visited a lawyer to talk about what might happen. should I divorce my husband? And so I was prepared to do that. And then February of the next year, I went in for a routine mammogram. I was 39 at the time. It was routine from a year before. They saw a benign lesion. They wanted me to come back and make sure it was okay. That lesion was okay. I had a brand new one, very small, and it was cancerous. And I had, so I kind of thought, God is telling me, okay, you're being selfish, you should stay in the marriage. And so I had my treatment. I said, I thought, who will take care of me if I'm sick? My husband will take care of me. And over the next year, I had my last radiation therapy on Good Friday, and I remember thinking, by this time next year, I'll make a decision. If I'm, I try and put my heart into the marriage and, see what happens. And, during that time is when, I mean, it's weird to say, but my husband, who's college educated, was afraid that I'd be radioactive during radiation. I worked every day of my treatment. And I came home and took care of everything at home. It was not an appropriate way to be dealing with an illness, and I knew that as a nurse, so.
So you get to Good Friday and...
So, actually, yeah, the next Good Friday, what had happened was, Ralph and I had known each other since 1980. So we'd been colleagues together. We'd been on things. He's always been such a nice man, always level-headed, always just the opposite of me. Calm and respected in ways for his thoughtfulness and things, where I was kind of, spontaneous. And so we sat together. His best friend, Darlene, and I were friends at the university, and, we were on things together. And it happened that March of now 96. So a year, just a month before Good Friday, a year later. And I am thinking, well, I know I don't want to be married anymore. I don't need to be married to anyone. I know who I am. I have a job. I will be well, it'll be a difficult, selfish kind of decision, because my son was 12. So it happened that Ralph was dating someone, but Ralph fell on the ice in March and broke his kneecap right in half. It was a bad ice storm. He'd gone into lecture, fell in the parking lot, and Darlene and I, Darlene said, hey, you want to come with me to the hospital? Ralph's fallen. And, so we drove over, and then we were sitting there, and I think the next day we decided we should go get stuff from his house, and his daughters are out of, the one who's an hour away isn't there. His girlfriend didn't come in, and I remember thinking, I don't know what I don't understand about Ralph, but why are the people who are closest to him not caring for a man like this? And so it was not, it wasn't about Ralph as much as thinking, this is a really nice man from everything I know. If I were ever going to be in a relationship, that is the individual that I would want. And so I think I knew Ralph was a possibility when the girlfriend didn't show up. I don't know. I mean, I think I thought, if I ran into somebody like Ralph, that is the only reason I would date. And then he was bedridden, and he was, without anyone. So I had already seen the lawyer again that year.
But the divorce was in the works?
Yes.
Okay. And
I think when you're a kid and something's grew up with a family, you hide that pretty well. And so, and I learned with Brad, my ex-husband, that if I shared something, an insecurity, a desire that I had, that turned out to be ammunition that he used to withhold it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided I was never going to lose someone because I wasn't open and honest, that I would never hide me. So the first thing I had to do was I had to tell Ralph that I was a breast cancer survivor,
Mm-hmm.
to see, you know, and he took that in stride. There were no questions about it. He asked if I was okay then. And I had seen Ralph for, almost 2 decades as just a person not ever trying to put on an act either. So I felt comfortable with him. And there were other situations where, I bought a car without asking. It was kind of a stupid car to do. It was a midlife crisis car, and I remember telling him about it after I'd done it and kind of waiting to see the normal reaction of, why the heck would you do that? And he just said, well, that was interesting. He said, that's an interesting decision. And he didn't harangue me for it. So I don't know if that was the question, but
Well,
if that was the answer to the question.
It indirectly answers the question.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good.
For me, Ralph was the first person who really accepted me, no matter what my opinion was about something. I really did feel kind of a godlike, not that I think he's a god, but I felt that kind of love that God promises to us, that acceptance. And I found that in Ralph, and so that's a very compelling feeling from another individual. A good sign is that Ralph let me, unlike so many women, I went from parents to college to marriage, because that was what I thought was expected of me in my small town. Ralph, I lived alone for five years, before we married, and we got married, and I asked to continue to live so I could raise my son for his last year of high school. So we got married and didn't live together another year after that. And he was, he kind of laughed and said, a lot of people live together before they get married, but you're saying we should get married and not live together.
Right.
And, it's the ask. I could always ask those kind of things without any kind of trepidation. He might disagree, but it was never in a way that was vindictive, or it was always
Or put
trying
you
to
down.
absolutely not put me down.
Yeah. Oh, that must have been pretty refreshing.
I hoped that it, I know it's tough on my son, but I know that later on, the cards he would write me, is that he saw a loving relationship that was built in a partnership versus the habits he was, I think, already starting to develop as he saw how his dad talked to me and treated me, So that was good to get on the other side of that and have him be an adult and know that somehow, there's that book about what you are now is what you were then, but it's essentially, I came to believe, is what you were now is what all of your family was then, things that you don't even understand until later on. You get a little history from them and find out from your older brothers and sisters.
So how long have you and Ralph been together?
We've been married 22 years, and like I said, we were together 5 years before that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Your story of finding love that brought you so much fulfillment and happiness is certainly a joy to hear, and one that I know will be inspiring to others. So thank you for your willingness to share it with us.
Thank you for shepherding me along. I appreciate it, Dick. Thank you.